What's going on, YouTube? It's Anthony Marvin again, bringing you another video. This time around, I'm going to be talking about loans and bonds in the real world, and essentially, this is just my final product for my financial math class. We've been doing a lot of investigating on this stuff, so I felt like bringing this information to you guys as well. But without further ado, let's dive right into it. So, the first kind of piece that we wanted to investigate was loans. And an easy way to think of loans is just when you borrow money from somebody. It's like, hey, I want to get a car. Well, you get a loan to get a car. You're borrowing money that allows you to buy that car. Or that's the same for a house. You're borrowing money from the bank at which you use that money to buy a house. But these these loans, they have to be paid back, obviously. And going inside of loans even further, there's different kinds of loans with how they get repaid back. You can have ARMs, which is just an adjustable mortgage rate loan. You can have fixed rate loans, which the rate at which you're required to pay back is at a fixed rate. And then there's even more loan types within these two primary loan types. So the first one I wanted to talk about was a fixed rate loan. So these, again, you have a fixed interest rate within its lifespan. So when you borrow that money, there's an interest rate tied to the loan that isn't going to change depending on what happens to the economy. So if the economy does really bad or the interest rates do go up, well, you'd still stay locked in with whatever interest rate you locked in at. So the benefit is that fixed interest rate, because you don't have to worry about if the rates go up. And because it's a fixed rate, you're going to have consistent payments. The drawback to this is because it's a fixed rate, if you get it at a higher rate and then all of a sudden interest rates go down, well, now all of a sudden you're paying more when you could have paid less each month on like a house payment or a loan payment. And then the last kind of drawback is refinancing for a lower rate is more challenging because of that fixed rate. So, an ideal scenario, think of you're getting a house and the market isn't doing very good and interest rates are relatively high, or maybe the interest rates are relatively low, but there's a lot of uncertainty and you think the rates are going to go up in the future. So getting a fixed rate loan now would be better because you'd lock in that lower rate, and or you just lock in a rate without having to worry about the potential change of the rate. So that would be an ideal scenario. Okay, so the next type of loan is called ARMs, and that's just adjustable mortgage rates. So this is essentially a loan in which the beginning first 5 years or so carry a fixed interest rate. Then after that, your rate is subject to change depending on how the economy is doing. So if the economy is doing really well and interest rates are low, maybe your rate goes down. But if it's doing bad, your rate will probably go up and you'll be paying a lot more. So the benefits, again, usually you start with a lower interest rate, so that translates to a smaller monthly loan payment. And also, it's easier to refinance for a lower rate in the future if there are good conditions because you have that adjustability to it. And then the drawbacks, again, there is a lot of uncertainty in the future, so you don't really know if you're guaranteed a lower rate. So your payments could become a lot higher. So if you are considering this type of loan, you should be prepared to anticipate paying higher payments just in case it does happen. So an ideal scenario for this type of loan, what a lot of people do, they would get an ARM loan. They'd use that to like buy a house, and because they know they're not going to stay in that house, maybe they bought a fixer-upper. They fix up the house for like 5 years, pay small monthly loans because you start with a lower interest rate, and then after that, because you fixed up the house, they sell the property, and then they use the cash of that property to pay off the rest of the loan, and whatever they have left over, it's essentially profit, and they can do what they want. They can buy another house and do the same strategy again. They can put that profit towards their forever home, whatever works. But that would be an ideal scenario in which an ARM would be optimal. So other types of loans within these two, I'm not gonna go and talk about all of these, like, because they're just names with different characteristics. I put them down right here. You can pause the video, read them real quick. I just give a quick summary. Each of them are dependent on what you're looking for as an individual. So definitely just skim through these, see what makes sense, and yeah. Now, PMI. This is crucial when getting a house. PMI is essentially, I believe the acronym is Premium Mortgage Insurance. I could be wrong on that. But what it is when you get a loan for a house, if you don't get enough, like if you don't put enough down to the person you're borrowing money from, they're going to see you as a liability. They're like, well, what happens if something happens to the house, or what happens if you don't pay me? So this is required by the banks or whoever you're borrowing money from to just protect them. And the average cost is a range depending on how much down payment you put in and depending on what your credit score is. So get that credit score up. And it is preventable. So as long as you put down 20% of the house, so if you have a $100,000 house, if you put down $20,000, that's 20%. You wouldn't have to have this premium mortgage insurance. And that's good because it's a lot of money. So try to avoid it if you can. All right. So another feature of buying a house and loans in general is this thing called an amortization schedule. And all it really is just a document or some form of a document that shows you all the steps, and it carves that path of how you're going to pay off a loan. It's very valuable because it gives very good insight on the loan. It tells you what your payments are each month. It tells you how much is going towards paying off the loan each month, how much is being wasted on interest each month, and it shows you how long it'll take you to pay it off. And another value of it is the variety it can have. You can have one that shows you, well, what if I added additional payments? Well, what if this and what if that? So it gives a lot of variety and very good insight on your loan. These are crucial, and I'm going to actually show you guys what one looks like in a second. All right, so here's the house. We were told to find a house, so I found a nice small little, it's not really a shack, but it's a tiny house, and so yeah. So The cost of it was roughly 85,000. So in my mind, I'm thinking I don't want that PMI, so I'm gonna put 20% up front when I go to the bank, and that's roughly $17,000. So if we just do some simple math, the actual loan I would need to take out is around 68,000. And I have a bunch of different ways I could take out a loan. Remember, those first few slides, there's a bunch of different loan types, so I have different options depending on what path I want to do. All right, so here's the amortization schedule that I essentially built in Excel. And this specific one that I built is more of it's very flexible. So if you look right here, I have a category labeled house price. I have a category how much I want to put down, and these values give me different returns depending on what I'm actually doing. So this one's more flexible. Typically, your amortization schedule is going to be like more strict because they're going to know how much you need up front. So they would have one more strict. But this is for if you didn't really know. But this is going to be for the house that I chose. So I put in my values, I put in all that. I've put in like my monthly payment stuff, and then it shows you right here the time in months and in years, because typically you're gonna have it monthly payment, so you can see this is the payment, then you can see like how much is going towards the interest, how much is going towards paying off the loan. It's actually pretty much nothing at the start. And then this shows you how much you still have left on this loan after you made your payment. So this is kind of what the amortization schedule looks like. It's nothing too crazy, but you can play around with the numbers. Maybe your interest rate on your loan is different than mine, so you type in a different interest rate. And again, that's an effective annual rate that's recorded as. But yeah. All right, so I essentially I played around with all the numbers in Excel based on my house, depending on what type of loan I wanted. I'm not going to do that like in this video because that would take too much time, but I can give you like a few statistical pieces that you can you can take from the different types of loans. So the 30-year fixed, I have that 6.89 interest rate percent, usually what the bank charges right now. And it shows you my monthly payments. It shows you how much I actually spent overall after I finished paying it. And remember, my loan was about $68,000, and I'm in the $157,000 at the end. So I paid a boatload just in interest. So again, if you can finish paying off as fast as you can so you don't spend more than, yeah. But then I gave another scenario. So in the first year, how much went towards interest? That's a lot of money from your pocket just going to interest. Interest does not go towards paying off that loan. That goes to the bank. The bank just made $4,500 off of me in the first year alone. So really try to get those loans, get as much paid as possible. Then you see I only paid $700 on the loan in the first year. And then another scenario, after 5 years, maybe you get a new job, so now you're making more money and you can afford to spend $77 more a month on these payments. That's great. Get that loan paid off. And you can see you don't spend as much when you finish paying off the loan, so you save roughly $22,000 just by beginning to pay $77 more a month. So it's really valuable to get your loans paid off and just paid off. And then these other two, again, Similar scenarios. This one's a fixed. You can read all that. This one's the ARM. So again, initially you start with a lower rate, so it's nice. But after say 5 years, the rate spikes, and we're just assuming the rate goes up to that high. So now you're paying more each month. So you just got to be careful with ARMs because you will probably have higher monthly payments after a certain period of time. So be on the lookout for that. Okay, so the next topic is essentially bonds. And what bonds are is just instead of you borrowing money, you're lending money to somebody else. And typically it's like the government or a bond broker, stuff like that. So you can usually acquire these by just you can get them online by getting a online bond broker, or you can go and just contact one in person. And there's different types of bonds similar to there's different types of loans depending on what your goals are. So the first type of bond that we'll talk about is just the inflation bond. So an inflation bond, kind of how it says, it's meant to deal with inflation. So the way it does this is through two forms of interest rates being applied. One is just the base rate that bonds are like held to, and then another rate is there that adjusts depending on the current inflation rate. So that's how it kind of defends against inflation. So the benefits of this, again, it mitigates your loss if you do get one, because it's that second rate is trying to combat the inflation, and it may even cause you to actually benefit. And another would be it's secure because it is a bond. Bonds are very secure usually, but the drawback to this security, low risk, usually translates to lower returns. The next type of bond is the treasury bond. So essentially, this is a bond where you have fixed income provided to you, and then it's typically backed by it's backed by the government. So it's very secure. Now again, because it's secure, probably going to have lower returns. But the benefits, again, it's secure. And another benefit is it's going to be paid back. Government historically has a 100% rate of paying back these bonds to the people who they get the bonds from. Another problem, though, is it doesn't combat against inflation. So that's kind of a bummer. But bonds relative to certificate of deposits or savings accounts, they're good, like secure wise, but I mean, you could argue and say they are somewhat the same, just more secure. So, yeah. So, the last kind of thing we needed to talk about was what if we were given $25,000? How would we spend that money? So, if I had a house mortgage that I still had, I would pay off whatever else I needed to pay off. And if I had leftover money, it would depend on how much I had left over, but in general, I would probably put 50% into the stock market to get more wealth, and then I would probably put 50% left over into like my savings account as like an emergency fund. And then the other scenario is, well, what if you don't have the house mortgage to pay off? Well, that depends. If I'm younger, I would probably put 10,000 in stocks, make some wealth, 10,000 in inflation bonds, so when I do get older, it's ready to cash out. Then I would use 5,000 to just travel the world, see places that I want to see. I don't know. Then if I'm older, I would essentially put 15,000 in the stock market for like more secure companies such as Walmart just to have security. And then I would put $10,000 in an inflation bond, and that would primarily be for like my children if I had them. So that way, like by the time they are ready to go to college, the bond has matured and it's ready to be like utilized. And yeah, that's kind of the end of my presentation, but I'm curious in the comments section down below. Let me know, how would you guys spend that money if you guys had $25,000 just handed to you? What would you guys do with it? And if you did enjoy what was presented today, definitely consider smashing that like button and definitely subscribing for more content. But in any case, I will see you guys later.